I'll do a short intro, Mike, so just be ready.
Okay.
I'll do a long one after that.
Hello and welcome to Welcome Home Radio. The waters in the mortgage industry can be pretty muddy, whether it's investing, leasing, renting, home insurance, or myths and misconceptions. Welcome Home Radio has the answers for you, the consumer. And now, to help you make the right home buying decision for you and your family, here are your hosts.
And welcome to Welcome Home Radio, where real estate lending and learning come together. This is your mortgage market update for December 2nd, 2020. Stocks are lower today, and mortgage bonds are trading at unchanged levels. The market shows signs of inflation, and that is the enemy of the bond market. We had a large sell-off yesterday, and it appears the market is waiting for signs today of which way to move. The ADP unemployment report shows 307,000 jobs were created in November, lower than the 420,000 job creations. But the biggest impact is companies are closing. Friday's BLS job reports are showing potentially 500,000 job creation in November, but this also includes 90,000 temporary jobs that positions could move or transition or change to full or go away. The MBA reports mortgage applications this morning decreased, but a major shift in the type. Refinances were down 5%, while purchases were up 9%. This is a great sign for buyer confidence in jobs and new starts in 2021. With buyer applications up and more homes are being sold, we'll have a need for inspections properly done, and knowing what will need to be done for a successful sale. We thought it would be great to have on our good friend, Mike Majeski, owner of Prestige Home Inspection. So glad to have you here, Mike. Thanks for taking the day off from golf. Appreciate it.
I wish. Thanks, Blair, Alan, Tom. Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on today.
And great to see everybody. Did everybody have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes, sir.
Yes, indeed.
Tom, you're not saying much. Are you still eating turkey? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm actually hanging out for right now is my turkey.
Your turkey sandwich?
My turkey sandwich.
I had it for lunch.
Smoked turkey.
Ooh. Well, I drove on Turkey Day, so my wife promised me Christmas. We're celebrating Thanksgiving and Christmas together.
Oh, even better. Even better.
It was an interesting one. We drove up to Kentucky, had a big plan for a big gathering like we do every year, and all of a sudden, Tuesday, it got shut down. So we went to the Ark Encounter there in northeastern Kentucky and came home on Thanksgiving Day. But kind of glad we broke the dog out of prison 2 days early on doing that. So he was rather happy. And again, we're in the holiday season. But Mike, I want to get back to this because I think this is very important, especially with the applications report showing an increase in purchase applications. What has changed for us in 2021? As I saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, inspection business is up dramatically this year in the DFW area. So that's really an indication of a lot of turnover and or purchases and sales. Is that correct?
And that's what we're seeing on, at least with us. We noticed that we had a slow month in end of March to mid-April, when COVID was at the height and hit. We were slow there, but over the summer, it blew up. I mean, we were doing far more than we did last year, and actually we surpassed the number of inspections we did all last year in July. So we went way beyond all we did last year. And I think part of that is, we did a lot more kind of targeted marketing as a business this year for us. But also, everyone else we talked to was the same thing. They were slam busy. In a few weeks there, it was tough to keep up with it, which no complaints, obviously. But we just saw it was a rather large uptick in buyers out there primarily it was buyers. We didn't see a lot of pre-listing inspections, and I know we've talked about that before, but those were virtually non-existent for us this year. But it was dramatically up over the previous year for us, for sure.
Well, that is really good. And can you help our listeners understand what has changed due to the pandemic? I like to call it something else, but I won't. But with the pandemic and what's going on, what changed for your business model in how you did inspections, how you responded to borrowers, and what changed for your industry?
Well, for us, there's a lot more involved with, primarily for us, like scheduling is a big thing initially, especially when the homes are occupied. So, we still use the applications to go in and get access to the house. But a lot of times, because more people working from home, they have their kids at home for school, it's a lot more kind of give and take to try to find the right period of time to do the inspection. And that can impact the buyer side, because they may have to get a longer option period if we can't get in as quickly as we usually would if this wasn't going on. A lot of times the sellers will leave the home when we're doing the inspection. That's ideal for us, but we had to kind of work around that this year because the kids can't just leave, and they're doing school remotely, so they can't just leave, or the parents are there because they're working from home, or really anybody because they're working from home, so they can't leave. Makes it a little more difficult on us.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's really interesting since, our wonderful host, Tom, is also rather impacted in the Coppell ISD and involved in that. Would you say, Tom, is that they hate to have students just step out and leave class in the middle, right?
Well, that does create a problem.
Is that attendance or is that homework wise?
Well, everybody's becoming a little bit more flexible with this format. Of course, there has been the chance or situation where we've had to switch back to remote learning at a couple of places. So you have to be flexible in the education field today. It's just and it's tough because you say, well, parents have to be flexible too, and it's like that's hard to reformulate your schedules and everything that you do with kids on the flip of a switch. But that's what it takes. You don't want a large group of people infected. And I've seen it again. We had to shut the high school down for a 2-week period. Fortunately, it revolved around the Thanksgiving holiday. So that worked a little bit better for us with regards to outbreaks that you see. But kids are affected by this. Despite what you may hear, I've seen some pretty sick kids.
And Alan, if you could help us understand, I think Mike brings up something really interesting. Having to go back and renegotiate the option period, does that tend to be a challenge, or because of these drills and the cause of the inspection not able to happen as soon as possible? Have you seen a lot of that?
I wouldn't say we've seen a lot of it, but every deal is different, and it just depends on the kind of seller you have and the kind of buyer you have.
I guess he's frozen out. I'm not sure.
I can hear.
I can hear him.
Yeah, I can hear Alan.
Hello.
Yeah, he's just talking away, just like Alan does.
Okay.
Hello.
I think Blair's frozen out.
I think Blair's the secret
We'll
person.
keep going until he comes back. But
Okay.
Yeah.
no, I haven't.
There we go.
inspectors are really, for the most part, easy to work with. They get it. Their parents, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts, they're all the same people we are, and they know we're all going through this together. And
Am I the
I
one
think-
causing this problem?
yeah, you're the one.
You are.
Why don't you use your chat or something so you can stop from bothering our conversation?
Wow.
Woo! And Tom's dropping the bomb on him.
You- Woo!
What's happening? Is it just me?
It's you.
Yep, it is, Blair.
Well, then I'll leave studio and come back. Y'all continue, please.
Okay, we got this. So Blair asked a good question about relationships between buyers, sellers, realtors, inspectors, for that matter, appraisers. They're all in the same boat here. And I've found it very easy to work with most inspectors, as they are also, like I said earlier, they're also parents. They're also members of the community, and they get it. We all have a job to do. And of course, until an inspector does their job, there's not much left for us to do. So
Right.
once somebody like Mike goes through a house and exposes things that need to be exposed for a potential buyer, it's generally within the 7-day option period. Some people do 10-day option periods, but in this market, most are not. They're 7 or shorter. That puts a little more pressure on an inspector. And like Mike said earlier, his negotiating skills for time, and that's where they are having to go in and do inspection when kids are in there. There's just so many days in a week, and sometimes you can get an extension on a deal, other times you can't. A lot of it has to depend on the answers you're getting from the people that you have to extend for. So an inspector has, a very good reason and says, but I'll be there on day 7, and you work with them and you trust them, then you go for the extension. But for the most part, it's not been a problem. Inspectors have worked extra hard to fill the gaps and to be there when they can. Some are working earlier and later, and it's just, I think we're all doing a little bit more than we used to do because of COVID.
Mike, what specific COVID-related precautions are you taking that we could understand?
So a big one for, just to protect not only the sellers and the clients, but also ourselves, because like Alan's saying, I'm a dad and I'm around a lot of people every day as doing inspections, and I don't want to bring something home to my family. So you have to take the proper precautions, which include, it's mask wearing while you're inside the house. Even if the people do leave the house, I still wear the mask during the inspections when I'm inside. Also, when I get there, it's a little time to get into a habit of, using the antibacterial and anti-alcoholic wipes on your hands. When I get out of my truck, I close the door, I've got that stuff in my bag, take it out, put it on my hands. And then also when I get home, my tools, I'm sanitizing my tools, 3-4 times a week. As soon as I get home and get done, I spray everything down with Lysol, lay it out in the garage to make sure that it's staying as clean as possible. You can only do so much, but the more precautions you take, that's that layered approach that, okay, maybe it gets past one layer, but it may not get past this other layer. So those types of things. And then also, a lot of times I'm going to do my debrief to our clients. They may not be comfortable coming to the inspection, or the seller might not be comfortable with them coming to talk about the inspection either. So if that's the case, there's been numerous times, in the last few months that I've done FaceTime meetups with the clients when we're done, and I'll walk around and actually turn my phone around and show them, okay, here's the thing I'm talking about when you see in the report. They may not be able to be there physically, but technology is so good nowadays with, you almost have 4K FaceTime on your phone and can show people, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So when you see in the report, this is the area, and you can point it out. Show somebody a slow drain instead of just a picture. You can actually turn the water on and they can see it, how slow it's going out of the drain or something like that, or a leak per se, that type of thing. And that's been really, really helpful for us. And it seems like the clients have been really appreciative of that too. So it lessens their exposure to anything potential. And we've been happy to do it. So that's worked out, but it's been a definite change, and it's been very different from what we're used to.
Well, I want to remind our listeners you can comment in the section to ask your questions here. Mike is here as well as Alan and Tom. What a great day to have everybody together and ask the questions that you might have dealing with inspections. Now, Mike, remind our listeners, what exactly are all the things that you might be looking at that we forget about, that you want to make sure you bring to awareness, and why people are doing and paying for that inspection so that they get a sense of exactly what they're doing there?
Well, since we're in the medical terminology right now, we're talking about COVID and everything. The best example I can tell people is that we are general practitioners for the home you're buying. Okay, just like you go to your general practitioner for family medicine, we do that for the house. We're going to give you an overall idea of the condition of the house in that snapshot of time. So the day that I do the inspection, the condition of the roof, the condition of the foundation, structural walls, the actual framing of the home that we can put our eyes on, anything visible, the plumbing, we're going to let you know if we see like I said before, slow drains, leaking fixtures, electrical issues like plugs that don't work. Maybe you don't have a ground fault interrupter installed where it's supposed to go. A panel that an electric panel might be in a hazardous location or show signs that it might have heat damage inside the wiring, that type of thing. So we can, number one, have those things further evaluated by, electrician or a plumber or a roofer, but also to lessen the risk for you as a buyer and kind of give you that little bit more peace of mind. Like, okay, what I'm buying here is a solid home. I'm not, obviously issues will creep up down the line because let's face it, that's what homes do. You're going to maintain your house over time. Things are going to go wrong. But you want to know that, a day after you move in, that your roof isn't caving in on you or something like that, or you're going to have to drop $60,000 into the foundation. That's what we're trying to lessen the risk of. And when we find those issues, we will refer you to an electrician or a plumber or a roofer to get it further evaluated to determine if repairs need done.
How often do you have to get into city code when you go and look at homes? Because you're all over the Metroplex. Your multiple cities support. How often do city codes come into play with your inspection and awareness of that, or homes are grandfathered in or that sort of thing?
Yeah, so usually we don't really dive into the code side of things because we are not codes inspectors. That's not what we do.
Okay.
But when there are issues that there is a code for, one of those, a good example would be smoke detectors. Okay, TREC views that as a safety issue. So even if it's an older home, if it doesn't have smoke detectors in every bedroom, we call that out as a safety issue. Okay. So, but from a codes perspective, that is not something that, a TREC certified home inspector is supposed to really muddy their feet in the water too much with that. That is left up to, the cities, municipalities. And I agree, Blair, I think that's one of the reasons we work across so many municipalities. Codes can vary a little bit from here to there. And it would make our job very, very difficult to be able to keep up with every single city that we go into and what their code requirement might be. And there's a set of standards. National Electrical Code is a good example. There are sets of standards, but that's not something that we will let the electrician who is trained and had to pass tests in that code to determine if there is an issue further than what we find. If we find signs and symptoms, we'll refer them because they're the expert.
Well, just like that general practitioner you stated, a general practitioner is going to turn it over to a orthopedic surgeon or an optometrist or so forth. Hey, Tom, what are we not discussing here dealing with inspections that you've seen a change over the years more recently? And especially it seems like we're setting 2021 up for a lot of purchases coming. It seems like the refi boom it's still there, but it's not as the strength seems to be moving toward purchases. So what are we not talking about or asking questions? And we've got an expert here on inspections.
Well, I know that the real estate community that I train, this sounds kind of weird, but they don't understand sometimes the difference between an appraiser and an inspector. I mean, that is probably one of the more common things. And I see Alan kind of smiling here as far as that goes. But I think the general public, what that does is that passes on to the general public confusion with regards to their actual role. Mike is not responsible for telling us that an AC will break 6 months from now. And that's the secondary piece that the public gets as far as when they buy a house. Oftentimes the seller, for peace of mind for the buyers, and also for them to kind of give them a clean slate on the seller's disclosure if they forgot that they had, had flood damage or water damage from a hot water heater or something like that. What they'll do is they'll pass on a homeowner's warranty to the buyer of the house to cover items. But it comes back to, I think, a great deal of, the responsibility of Mike. Mike's not there to scare the general public, but Mike's there to inform them.
Right.
And that's what I think isn't conveyed enough to the real estate community, to buyers of homes, that things, you have to take them with a grain of salt as to the prediction of things changing later. It's not Mike's crystal ball, for instance. It's Mike's report on the status of that house at the time he's standing in the house. So I think really what my biggest concern when I see the conversations, I see misconceptions about what Mike is actually tasked to do in his role.
So
Well, for me, the inspection process starts my first meeting with a seller. Under contract, I'm going to list that house. Now I become a pre-inspector, and not trained, not anywhere near where Mike goes, but having been around it long enough, I know the things that need to work, and I know the things that inspectors are going to call out. And a good example is the electrical panels, American Standard or whatever kind of a panel you might have. Houses basically been built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s in Dallas-Fort Worth. There are new ones, but a lot of old ones too. And it's their job in the year 2020 to call out a 1955 electrical panel if it doesn't meet today's standards. Now, does that mean the house is going to burn down? Well, no, it's 65 years old. It's fine. But Mike's trained to expose those possibilities for a potential buyer. And I would say that's probably the number one thing that I deal with is the electrical panels on older homes. Just about all of them we have to address. And you want to, as a realtor, have your buyer feel comfortable. And when you're representing a seller, you make them aware that this is going to get called out. It's probably going to get called out, so be prepared for it. So why does that matter? Well, price matters. Negotiation during the option period, all that matters. So, Mike's going to come in, and the big things in Texas remain, the electrical, the foundation, and the roof. And Tom's point about the seller disclosure is a great one, because honest or not honest, people do forget they had a claim or,
that can happen
years ago.
Yeah.
And water happens, and I've had several, but the Clue report that we talk about, Blair, on this show all the time, it doesn't hide. If you've made a claim, the insurance world knows about it. So as a realtor, to me, the inspection thing starts the minute I start representing the seller. And then as a buyer agent, when I walk into the home with them, this is my little standard, if I can see things blatantly wrong, then what hasn't that seller done in the attic? Where they never, if they're not fixing it right in front of my eyeballs, Mike's going to be in the attic for like 2 hours alone, just identifying one thing after another.
Right.
Generally the case. Is that not right, Mike?
No, I agree with that. As an inspector, I have to give an unbiased opinion of things. So, when you come into a house and right off the bat you start seeing things, lack of maintenance, that type of thing, your ears really start perking up big time. And you're thinking, the first thing enters your mind, like, okay, this is gonna be a long report right off the bat, because you're gonna find more than what you're just seeing walking around outside. So, that's a really good point, Alan. That preparing, doing the right things, maintaining your home while you're living there, taking care of it the best way that you know how, it goes a long way, in the long run. Not only is it going to, it's going to keep your value up for one, but number two, when you do come to sell the house, there's just going to be less issues. that I'm going to find. A good example is one I just did last week. That it was a 1986 home. It was immaculate. But you could they were the original owners, but you could tell that they took pride in their home and did the right thing and took care of it and addressed issues as they came up. And for that reason, there were very few issues. There were still some things that you just can't get around, but overall, it was a really, really solid house because they addressed things as they came up.
Well, I've got three things out of the conversation we just had. And first off, I'm sorry, Michael, I got to call you out. Unbiased is not possible. You are as biased Cleveland fan I ever know.
8-3. 8-3.
Oh my
God! All I gotta say.
8-3.
8-3. What were the Cowboys again? I forgot.
Pigs can't
I don't
fly.
know. I'm not following the NFL or the NBA. So hey, I do want to back up what Tom said. Inspections and appraisals. I look at it a little bit different. I want to make sure our listening audience understands it from, I guess, the verbiage I would use. The inspections paid for by the borrower, the appraisals paid for by and paid in the lender, and that's to evaluate the value of the home along with any major issues. Does it pass that appraisal depending on the loan type? So understanding that the inspection is for the borrower themselves to get information. How often do you see, Alan, homes that don't do an inspection at all? They just wait on the appraisal.
If I'm the buyer agent, none. That's simple. Now, if I'm with Tom and he's an investor, I don't tell, if he asks my opinion, I give it to him. But, investors a lot of times are like, they have their own people, crews and things that come in and give it a good look. Or they'll have an inspector come look at it too before. But if I'm with a regular buyer, I have never done a home with no inspection. I tell them it's not required by law, that nobody can make you do an inspection, but it's the biggest purchase you're going to make in your life. You want to make sure you're buying it, and you want to have an inspection. So the answer is zero. And I've never had a buyer tell me that's bad advice, I'm not going to do it.
Okay. And then now my final statement here is, and Mike, you made it well known up front, your pre-inspection business is down. And I just do not understand how a seller would not want to have a pre-inspection done before they're selling their home so that they know what could be possibly need to be fixed or find or realized, even if it's the windows and okay, we're going to make that negotiating point as opposed to repairing them. Why is pre-inspection business down? Why don't people do more pre-inspections?
Well, I think Alan probably have a little better insight on this one, but my feeling, I know one of the reasons that people are going to say, well, they're going to get an inspector in here anyway and find out what's going on, or some people are just like, my house is fine, I don't need a pre-listing inspection because they live there every day and just don't think it's necessary. But I think Alan would probably have a little more insight on why people don't like to do the pre-listing inspections, just from working with the clients all the time and everything like that. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, if you're doing first off, the seller disclosure asks you if you ever had inspected in the last 4 years or 3 years. So 3 or 4, Tom. It's one of those years. If you've had an inspection, you have to share it. And so that's called disclosure.
4.
Okay. And once it's out there, it's out there. So, if the house is gorgeous, beautiful, and, they want to do a pre-inspection, I'm okay with it. But if it's an older home and they ask me, I go, well, why don't we let the buyer do their due diligence and then we'll address it from there. And generally that's good advice. But again, as a realtor, I can't tell anybody what to do. They'll ask an opinion and I'll give it. And that's about it. But to me, I'm like Mike. I think, on a buyer, it's different for investors. Okay. They do a lot of pre-inspections because foreclosure homes, you're told to in some situations. Sometimes investors have to turn the lights on themselves with their own money to get the inspection done. So they'll do that before they even make their offers, a lot of them. But it's different with normal buy and sell situations. I've dealt with a couple of them over the years, not many, but generally, if you have an experienced seller and they want to do a pre-inspection because they're proud of their home, they might challenge themselves to find something wrong. I've done such a good job. That's the only couple times I've run into it. And it's generally, I think you just let the buyer, it's buyer beware, buyer do your diligence, buyer hire Mike, Mike do your job, and then we just get through it.
Yeah, and I want to make clear too that in our business, pre-listing is extremely small part of it. It's always been a very small part of it. So it's not like we see a ton of them anyway. But this year especially, I don't even think I've had one this year. So
Well,
I'm trying to figure this out.
Business side of it, new construction. Okay, when the market's tight like this and resale homes are few and far between, new construction's booming, and it is right now. A lot of going on. So I think the public doesn't understand that as a buyer, you can have an inspector do an inspection on a build home. And I've been involved with that, and mostly on the larger homes with very prominent builders. And let me tell you something, if there's people involved, there's mistakes made.
Yep.
And I'll tell you where inspectors really come in handy is when the wood's up there, the wiring's in, all the other things are in, but before they drywall, it's an amazing thing what inspectors can find in that situation. It just blowed my mind on dimension and off and, structurally not exactly the way it should be. And these are big, big builders who, I don't care if it's a $800,000 home or $300,000 home, they're still going up really fast. Okay. And so mistakes get made and shortcuts happen. And ironically, I don't do it and see it as often on a smaller home, but on the big builds, I always recommend to the $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 buyer, I want to spend $400 here.
It's
get in there and give it a good look. And you have to get permission. It's not our house, but it's under contract, and in the contracts, it states in there's a way to do it. You just have to follow their rules.
Wouldn't that be a multi-layered inspection if it's a new build that you have to go in there before drywall and then going back in there once cabinets are in and all of that?
Yeah, we call them phased inspections. So, and you can do them, when they pour the foundation, before they pour the foundation, you can do one. After they pour it, when the framing goes up, then once they wire, plumb everything in, like Alan's talking about, a lot of people will do it then just to see what everything's looking like, because you can't always depend on codes inspectors to come out, and especially with all the new construction going on, they can't keep up. They can't keep up. Yeah. So, doing that is always a prudent move. I agree, because we're now getting into starting to do phase inspections. We're starting to do those, and it's a little bit different, but it's advantageous, especially like I agree with Alan on larger builds that are with people that are really busy, with builders that are really busy. It's a good idea, and even after the home's done, I do a lot of new home inspections, and I find things that I'm just like blow my mind. I've had ones where, they have gas water heaters in the garage, and the flue in the attic where it's supposed to go in the exterior, it's just pouring into the attic. They don't have it connected. And you'll have exhaust gases going in the attic, and the attic is ventilated, but you can't have that. That's a no-no. So
another thing actually that most people don't talk about, Blair, is new construction. Most of them have a 1-2-10 warranty. And 1 year unconditional, right? Well, on month 11, hey, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Let's let the builder fix it if it ain't right.
Yeah, and we find things all the time. We find issues, and we get a lot of warranty inspections too because of that. We'll do the primary inspection, then, like Alan's saying, 10 months later, hey, I've got this list of stuff I found. Can you come take a look at this and see what you find? And we'll put the two lists together and have the builder address it. So yeah, that's another really good avenue to take when it comes to making sure that everything's good and having the builder take care of those problems in that first year.
And again, when you're a realtor, you prepare your clients for new builds just like resales, because watering is important, and filters and ACs are important. And a lot of first-time home buyers don't really care about the rental homes. They're just like living, that's in the contract, you're supposed to water it once a week or whatever, but they don't because they're saving money and it's not their house. But when they're buying the new house, it's like, these are the things you have to do. If they do all those things, then that inspection in 10 months can really help them.
Great. Well, that is, I mean, phased inspections I was not aware of, and I think that is a great tool, especially like you say, after almost at the midway or later in that year, do an inspection of that new home. Mike, I've already wrote down, I've got 3 custom home builders I want to introduce you to. So we'll get you out there.
They're probably not going to like me much.
Oh, they probably will.
Don't wear your Cleveland hat.
Yeah.
All of them do VA. All of them do VA specialty construction loans with me. And,
Oh, nice. Okay.
I want to take care of those veterans, and they want to do the same because they're all veterans. And so
My business partner is a Marine veteran.
there you go. So we gotta take care of that. What are we not asking here, Tom? What are we not covering? What do our hearers need to know further about inspections? What's going on? Mike is right about we've gone over certain aspects of, and what inspection is. I think we kind of talked about the appraisal inspection difference, but it sounds like more and more inspections are needed. What else are we not asking, or what we should be aware of? Because, you in the previous shows, Mike, you've talked about your process of how you inspect externally first and then internally, and you've got a clockwise pattern in the home and so forth.
Right.
But what are we not thinking about here?
Well, I like the fact you've kind of addressed the new home builder circumstance, because people don't think that with the new home they need one. And I can't express again how important it is for new home owners to get those home inspections done. And they say, well, that's just more money. No, it's not. It's again, some good assurances to somebody that's capable like Mike, coming through and reinforcing what a builder may have inadvertently looked at incorrectly, and not to say that they were malicious in their intent. I don't think that, and I think that's the idea, is for everybody to understand, Mike, sometimes that role of inspection is seen as an antagonist, and it's just not the case. Everybody needs it. The seller needs it as well as the buyer on the house. And there's my classes, of course, I have a class of 200 people, and they were talking about an inspection on a house that they recently purchased, a new home, and they got a home inspection, and the home inspector still missed things. And so Mike might want to address, some of his culpability, what the expectations would be. I think to some degree, in other words, he's got exposure here, and maybe so the public might understand a little bit better that he's not the end all be all. He's human. He's going to make mistakes, I'm sure, as we all do. I know, Blair,
Absolutely.
Blair's never made a mistake, so it's kind of hard talking around this, but I was just wanted to be cautious. But
Hey, I'm on this radio show. That's proof in the pudding.
exactly, with me and Alan. Oh my gosh, how scary is that? But Mike might want to talk to the fact as far as what he sees as culpability for his industry, because he goes through a lot to get to where he is to be a professional in his field.
It is, and Tom, and you're absolutely right. We are human, and you're gonna miss things. One of the things that I think people do think that as an inspector you're going to see every single tiny little defect, whatever it is. And when you go, if people went and looked at what our standards that we have to follow, it's not technically exhaustive. It even says that in the regulations. It's not a technically exhaustive inspection. And so from what I take from that is that, okay, we are trying to find issues that, number one, safety is going to be the first one. And then number two is going to be, okay, what are the biggest impacts to potentially the buyer that might cost them the most money, if something happens. So, roof, foundation,
roof.
HVAC, that type of stuff. So, it's not that you're not being very detailed on, smaller things as you are on the big things, because you are. And when you do this long enough, you know what to look for. You know what you're seeing and what you've seen enough to say, okay, this is going to be a problem. But the bigger dollar items are usually the ones that will come back and bite people. So maybe windows and type things like that, you try to make lists of. But from an inspector standpoint, yeah, there is culpability here, because we may not see everything, but we want to be as thorough and detailed as possible. And I think you do that by experience and education, number one. Having a good flow, Blair, like what you were talking about, and being comfortable with it. So when I'm doing the actual house, I know in my flow where I'm going to be seeing certain defects, and it's pretty much the same on every house. So you know where things are going to start to crop up. You've been doing it long enough, and the education side of things, keeping up. And Trek requires us to do 32 hours of CE every 2 years to renew our license. My business partner and I probably do 4 or 5 times that amount. I'm probably doing a class once a month at least, if not 2, because things change. Exactly what could be defective. Things change. People can come up with a better plan of action on how to, find certain things. And so you always have to be in a learning process. So I think if you're doing that and being diligent about doing those types of things, and you take your job seriously, like you're going to be the one moving into that house, because that's how we view them. I think in my mind, would I let my family move in this house? And if you do that and you take ownership of that, you can be much more thorough. It doesn't mean you might not miss something, but the chances are it's probably going to be something smaller that's not as impactful to the buyer. So that's how I kind of try to do my business, and it's worked well. I think we do a really thorough and detailed job, and people have been very happy with what we provide. And it's just a matter. I feel like you really just have to take ownership of it, and if you do that, I think you're going to do well.
I totally agree. And as a realtor, when you go in there, you owe it to your client too to take care of them. That's what you do. You want them to be happy and safe. And when you see something that looks a little iffy, you'll say to the inspector, check it out. I often will talk to the inspector, and it's okay to do that. But I guarantee when Mike walks into a home, he already knows when he goes through the front door, is this going to be good? It's going to be average, it's going to be horrible, or it's going to be amazing. He's got a 50-50 feeling right off the bat, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it is. And some people's maintenance of a home to them is 100%, but to the average person, it's really not. It's 15-20%.
So, Mike, how was your feeling coming on the show? Was it 50-50? Was it,
Blair, when you're hosting the show, it's 30-70, buddy. I don't know. Especially because you always got to drop in the Browns comment.
I said Cleveland. You added the Browns. I mean,
we know who you were talking about.
Hey, let our listeners know how to get a hold of you. How do they get a hold of you at Prestige?
So you can check out, we're Prestige Home Inspection. You can look us up on the internet where it's prestigeinspectiontx.com. And we have our website up there, so you can take a look at a sample report. You can actually book online. If you don't want to call us, you don't have to. You can book right online through our website. And then our phone number is 682-803-6866. And that you can get a hold of us that way as well.
So how's your golf swing right now? Because because you've been doing so many, it's non-existent. Is that what?
Yeah. So I had 2 epidural steroid injections in my lower back last week. So 3 months I could not sit in the truck for more than like 10 minutes. I had to get out. And
it's hard to be an inspector with that going on.
Well, you fought through it. A lot of ibuprofen.
You plan all your calls very close to each other.
Oh my, yeah, it was rough. But so hopefully in the next few weeks though, I can start getting back out because I'm feeling good and that herniated disc has calmed down. So I'm hoping. We'll see.
Gentlemen, you have not played golf until you get to play with Mike Majeski.
Oh, whatever. Don't listen to that.
All day long. In fact, Bobby wanted me to. I told him you were going to be on the show, and Bobby wanted me to say hello.
Please tell him I said hello as well.
He's looking forward to us coming down to Waco and playing. He's got this course set up very tight, he said from every tee box, it does not matter. It is hard. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
it's gonna be fun. Well, listen, guys, I think, I want everybody to understand the holiday coming up. We've got a lot of great times. I hope COVID is not causing such an issue in your family life. I hope you're able to celebrate. But I do want to challenge you one thing, and for our listeners as well. Are you celebrating Christmas this year? Are you celebrating Christ? Just ask yourself that question, please. Because if you're not celebrating Christ, the reason for the season, I hope you can focus in on that. And if you have questions on it, contact me. I'd love to talk to you about it. But we have such a blessing here in America, such a blessed state as well as country. We need to make sure we understand who we're celebrating, because Christmas is just a happening. It needs to be celebrating Christ. So I appreciate y'all. Any last comments? Any last words? Nothing?
I just want to say thanks to you guys for letting me come on. It was good to see you guys. It's been a while. So hopefully next time it'll be in the studio and not on Zoom.
And of course, my question for Mike is, where are you getting this education, Mike? I need to pass you my card. I mean, 3 or 4. Yeah.
I still do some stuff through Champions, but
Okay.
I tell you, I use Internachi, and they're based in Colorado, and they're just awesome for us as an inspector. But hey, I still use Champions, Tom. I still use Champions for some of my stuff. So
I know.
They're amazing. That's how I got my education when I started this. I went through Champions, and it was a great experience.
I knew you were one of our original students, so
yep,
that's good to hear. We're really frustrated. We built these facilities with some really good specialty rooms to train inspectors, and because of the limitations of body count and that type of deal, we just can't open up those rooms again.
Yeah,
but we do a lot of hands-on laboratories, and for those people trying to get in the business, I think Champions is one of the better options, simply because you get to go in and touch and feel all the things you've been talking about, electrical boxes and plumbing and all those things, and actually see them firsthand with regards to that. So it's been kind of painful not seeing all those great people come through our doors. That
I know Abe's been texting me trying to figure out when you're going to leave. So
yeah, exactly. And people keep asking me what that spot is on his head, and I remind everybody he was shot in the back of the head. But anyway,
I thought that was a fly.
Yeah, okay, next week I'm going to have a picture of JFK behind me.
Oh my.
Well, good.
We'll just get the president thing going.
Yeah, we'll just do that.
There you go. Well, folks, thank you so much. Mike, thanks for coming on again today. We appreciate you. And what's your prediction for the NFL this year? Go ahead and give it to us.
My prediction?
Your prediction.
Cleveland will make the playoffs. That's number one. But I think it's going to be Pittsburgh or Kansas City. One of those. Those are the two best teams in the NFL. So
kind of really, yeah.
It's just a matter of Pittsburgh. Their defense is some of the best I've seen in 15 years. So if they can shut down, if they can play like Las Vegas did against them, then I don't think anybody in the NFC is going to be one of those teams, though.
And are you heading to Cleveland or Ohio at any time during the holiday?
We're not. We were supposed to be up there a couple weeks ago, and because of my back, I couldn't sit on an airplane, so we couldn't go. But we'll be here for Christmas instead of New York, because we're afraid of being fined if we go up there. So we're not going to New York. So we'll be here. We'll be here in a nice Texas weather.
What's that?
So if you got two choices, Alan, when you go up there. Either one, you quarantine for 14 days when you get there, or you show that you had a test 3 days prior, and then you have to quarantine for 4 days, get retested while you're there, and then they'll let you out of quarantine if you're out of state. Now, my
daughter's coming home for Christmas, so I hope we get through that.
Yeah, it's knowing our luck, we would get caught and fined. That's why we don't even want to take the risk. And they fine you like $10,000. It's some just ridiculous amount. It's just crazy. So we're obviously not doing that.
What part of Cleveland are you from?
Akron Canton area, so 45 minutes south east of Cleveland.
Okay. Well,
but,
Hall of Fame.
Yep.
There you go.
I grew up 15 minutes from there.
Okay.
I do want to go to
My son lives in Chagrin Falls.
Oh yeah, I know Chagrin Falls. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Shoot, we used to play them in basketball when I was in high school.
Really?
Yeah, they were in our division. I remember playing them in high school.
Way cool.
Small world.
No joke.
Well, Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope everybody has a safe holiday season. And I'm Blair Thomas.
I'm Tom Holm.
I'm Alan Pace.
God bless and celebrate Christ while you're